for another episode of Funding Fundamentals, CWELCC Cost-Based Funding Explained, the podcast where we demystify Canada-wide early learning and childcare cost-based funding, one episode at a time. I'm Ashley McMullen, your host, here to guide you through the complexities of funding and what it means for childcare providers. But here's the twist. Our guests, who will help us demystify these topics, they aren't human. They are AI-generated voices with a knack for breaking things down, crunching numbers, and maybe even throwing in a little bit of digital wit. This limited series is here to make funding fundamentals crystal clear. So let's decode CWELCC with the help of voices that never get tired. Let's hear from our special guests.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really zooming in on one specific, pretty crucial piece of the CWEL LCC funding system, the legacy top-up.
Legacy top-up, often misunderstood. Yeah, so our mission really is to clarify how this funding actually works. Think of this as like your shortcut to understanding this very specific, sometimes confusing, bit of the childcare funding puzzle. So let's unpack these assumptions. Let's try and uncover the truths, which might actually surprise you, maybe even change how you view childcare funding. Okay, let's dive right in.
What's interesting is that the legacy top-up, well, the name itself kind of gives a hint, right? Legacy. It's really a provision for centers that were already part of the CWEL-CC program way back when the cost-based funding model first came in. So just to be absolutely clear, based on the info we have, this legacy top-up only applies to what they specifically call legacy centers. Right. These are the operations that were already in CWEL-LCC at that particular point in time. So it means basically if a center isn't getting a legacy top-up right now, they won't get one later. It's not like an ongoing thing for new places or even centers that didn't meet that original historical criteria.
Okay, let's tackle another common assumption then. Lots of people think, quite understandably really, that CWEL-LCC funding is just based on, how many kids the center looks after. More children equals more funding. Seems like the simplest way, right, to allocate money. But again, that's not quite how it works, is it?
No, that's another really important point to clarify. It touches on the fundamental structure here. And while linking funding directly to enrollment numbers, well, it seems intuitive, sure. The truth is, CWEL-LCC funding, and this definitely includes the legacy top-up, it's primarily based on a center's historic cost.
Okay, so we've knocked down those myths. Who gets it? Not everyone. What's it based on? Historic costs, not current kid count. So, knowing it's tied to past costs for specific established centers, it leads to the obvious question. What is this legacy top-up then? In practical terms, how does this funding adjustment actually work for those centers that qualify?
Right. So at its heart, the legacy top-up is a very specific financial tweak, you could say, an adjustment. It's precise. It only gets applied if a center's adjusted 2025 costs. Remember, those are the historic 2023 numbers, but updated for today's reality. If those adjusted costs are higher than the provincial benchmark set for 2025.
Okay, higher than the benchmark. Okay, so for anyone trying to really picture how this works day to day, this is where the mechanics get interesting. Let's walk through exactly how this safety net actually gets activated. Understanding the steps takes it from just an idea to a concrete process. Right? Let's make it super clear. How is this legacy top-up calculated? How is it applied? We can break it down. 3 distinct steps, manageable steps. It's not some secret formula. There's a definite logic. Step 1. You start with the base number. That's your 2023 audited costs.
Yes, absolutely. That 2023 baseline is so critical. It just reinforces that whole idea that past spending is what this funding hinges on. And the reason it's the 2023 audited financials, well, it's pretty straightforward. They represent a, comprehensive, independently checked snapshot of what a center actually spent before this new cost-based funding fully kicked in. Audited financials give you a solid, transparent base for calculating future funding, ensures the starting cost is based on real, verified spending, not just estimates. It's the bedrock, really. Everything else builds on that. Anchors the funding to a center's actual operational reality back then.
Okay, got it. Solid baseline from 2023, audited. But things change, right? Costs don't just stand still. Inflation happens, operations shift. So that takes us right into step 2. Adjust them for operational changes, inflation, and changes in fixed costs. This is where that 2023 number starts to reflect, today's world.
Exactly. And this adjustment part is, it's paramount. It's crucial. It makes sure those historic costs we just talked about actually reflect the operational realities for 2025. It just wouldn't be realistic to use 2023 figures straight up without accounting for all the economic shifts since then. plus specific operational changes a center might have genuinely made. And also changes in fixed costs, like rent going up or mortgage adjustments. Those are factored in too. The goal here is to get to an adjusted 2025 cost, a number that accurately shows what it really costs that legacy center to operate in the target year. It considers verifiable, necessary cost increases that have happened since their 2023 baseline. It brings the past into a more accurate present, basically.
Right. Bringing the past up to date. Makes sense. And now the final piece, the moment of truth, you could say, where that safety net actually comes into play. Once you have those adjusted 2025 costs reflecting current reality, we hit step 3. Compare that number to the 2025 provincial benchmark. This is where the legacy top-up either happens or it doesn't.
Exactly. This comparison is the decider. So the provincial benchmark, that represents a kind of standardized cost per space that the province thinks is, well, sufficient for childcare operations in 2025. It's like a reference point. What costs should be, in theory. So when a center's adjusted 2025 costs are compared to that benchmark, one of two things happens.
Okay.
Scenario 1, if the center's adjusted costs are higher than the provincial benchmark, this is where the legacy top-up kicks in.
Yeah.
The center gets a top-up payment to cover the difference, that gap. This is precisely the safety net we talked about doing its job, making sure centers with legitimate, verified costs higher than the general benchmark aren't left short. It acknowledges their unique cost structure, based on their history.
Okay, so it covers the difference if they're higher. What if they're not?
Right. Scenario 2. If the center's adjusted costs are lower than the benchmark, or maybe equal to it, then the center does not get a top-up. And the logic here, as the sources explain it, is that in those situations, the provincial benchmark is already seen as enough to cover their needs. There isn't that gap that needs extra funding. Okay, that makes sense. Looking at the examples in the source material really helps make this concrete.
Yeah, let's walk through those. Let's take Provider B from the document.
Okay, Provider B.
Their 2023 audited costs were $110,000. After they applied the adjustments for inflation and those fixed costs, their calculated adjusted cost for 2025 came out to $120,000.
Okay, $120,000. And the source says the provincial benchmark for 2025 is set at $115,000.
Correct. So you compare. Provider B's adjusted costs, $120,000,
Higher than the benchmark.
are higher than the $115,000 benchmark by $5,000. So according to the rules laid out, Provider B gets a $5,000 legacy top-up.
Which brings their total funding to $115,000 plus $5,000.
Exactly, $120,000, which is precisely their adjusted cost number. The safety net worked perfectly for them.
Okay, clear example. Now let's contrast that with Provider A, also in the source.
Right. Provider A, their adjusted 2025 costs, calculated the same way from their 2023 audit, came out to $110,000.
Okay, $110,000, and the benchmark is still the same, $115,000.
Yep. So in this case, Provider A's adjusted costs, $110,000, are lower than the benchmark, $115,000.
So following the rule.
They don't qualify for the legacy top-up. No top-up is applied.
But, and this seems really important, Provider A still gets the full benchmark amount, right?
Absolutely crucial point, yes.
Yeah.
They still received the $115,000.
So even though they didn't get the specific top-up, their funding, $115K, is actually $5,000 more than their own calculated adjusted costs, $110K.
Precisely. The benchmark itself already provides more than enough funding to cover their historically based needs, plus that extra $5,000 cushion. So the top-up mechanism just isn't relevant for them.
Okay. So taking a step back from the mechanics, why is this so important for you, for you listening, for providers to really grasp how this legacy top-up works?
Well, I think it goes beyond just, understanding one line item on your funding statement. Understanding this really reinforces that the Seaway LLCC system, at least as it's described here in the source, puts real weight on your actual documented operating history.
Right. It tells you that the work you did tracking and getting your costs audited back in 2023 directly impacts your funding stability now.
Exactly. It sort of shifts the focus away from just thinking, oh, is my funding just about how many kids I have right now?
Yeah.
To recognizing, okay, it's deeply connected to my specific cost reality, as shown in the past. And knowing that helps you understand why your funding might look different from the center down the road.
Even if you serve a similar number of kids.
Right. Because your historical cost structures might just be different. It acknowledges that variability.
Okay, good point. So maybe let's do a quick recap, just the key takeaways about the legacy top-up based on this material.
Sure. First, and maybe most importantly, it's based on your specific historic costs from 2023, adjusted forward. It's not based on your current enrollment numbers.
Right. Point 1, Historic costs matter. Point 2.
You only get it if your calculated adjusted 2025 costs are higher than the 2025 provincial benchmark. It's conditional.
Okay. Third point.
If your adjusted costs are lower than the benchmark, you don't get the top-up, but you do still get the full benchmark amount.
Which already covers your costs in that scenario.
Correct. The benchmark itself is sufficient.
Yeah.
And fourth.
Let's see. It's designed as a kind of fairness measure, right? An equitable thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's there to ensure providers who genuinely had higher costs historically aren't disadvantaged by a standard benchmark. It helps ensure sustainability across different types of providers.
So really wrapping your head around this fact that CWEL LCC funding, and this top-up specifically, ties back to documented historic costs, not just today's headcount, seems absolutely vital for navigating the system.
It really does. And, as we've been talking through this funding calculation and looking at the source material, it does kind of hint at another piece of the puzzle that often causes confusion for providers, something called the parental offset.
Ah, yes, the parental offset. That definitely sounds like a topic for another deep dive.
For sure. We could explore what that actually is based on the source, why it affects the funding numbers.
And maybe clarify, as the source seems to suggest, that it's part of the overall funding picture, not necessarily some kind of isolated penalty.
Exactly. It's all part of understanding the whole system.
Absolutely, because ultimately, our goal here is just to help you make sense of all these layers in the funding system that, supports the incredibly important work that you do every day. So keep digging into these details with us. They really do matter.
That's it for this episode of Funding Fundamentals, CWELCC Explained. I hope you found today's discussion insightful and that it helps you navigate the complexities of Canada's early learning and childcare system with confidence. If you have any questions, thoughts, or topics you'd like us to explore, feel free to reach out. Stay tuned for more episodes where we'll continue breaking down funding in a way that's clear and accessible. Until next time, I'm Ashley McMullen, and thanks for listening.